MH370. As many of you know, it's been over a decade since the disappearance of this flight, a case that remains one of the most perplexing and tragic in aviation history. While the technical and investigative aspects of this incident have been widely covered, today we're going to approach it from a different angle. We're now joined by Ashraf Patel, a research associate at the Institute of Global Dialogue. Ashraf, shukran so much for availing yourself this morning.
Walaikum salam, Zaid, and Juma Mubarak to one and all.
All right, so the case being reopened, the Malaysian government has agreed to reopen the investigation. We've all heard about the aviation aspects of Flight MH370, but from your perspective, as a researcher focusing on the politics, how do you view the long-running mystery of this tragedy, say in terms of international relations, for example?
Definitely. This case incident is a decade old, stemming from March 2014, and it has gone through many contours in the world of aviation and regional diplomacy. It is also at a technical level, as you pointed out, one of the mysteries, in a sense that it's one of the only airplanes where the black box has not been recovered. And that is all the more perplexing. And out of this, a whole cottage industry has developed with over 7 to 8 books written, as well as many documentaries on the disappearance of MH370. The backdrop being the challenging geopolitical challenges in the South China Seas. As we know, the flight was destined from KL, Kuala Lumpur, to Beijing, and many theories has developed over the years as to why and how the plane disappeared off the radar as it entered Thai airspace, and even all the military satellites thereafter 2 hours or several hours thereafter could not then locate the plane. So as of today, 10 years later, there is no trace of the plane, the wreckage, nor the DNA of those that have supposedly passed on. And therefore, the Malaysian government this week has decided to reopen the investigation, even though the investigation has cost over $110 million. Both the Malaysian and Australian governments have spent those resources over the years, but Malaysia is putting out another $70 million in order to locate the wreckage. So this is the current context as the days go on.
Talk to us about the relationship then between China and Malaysia as it stands.
Well, quite fortuitously, in fact, just this week, 9 countries joined the BRICS bloc nations, and which includes Malaysia, Indonesia, which is the regional economic giant, countries such as Uganda, as well as Bolivia. So the BRICS bloc nations, under the leadership of China, is growing in leaps and bounds. And I think the backdrop is also several other Boeing planes have crashed. Just last week was the South Korean airline Jeju, of which 180 passengers have perished in the crash. And initial investigative reports are pointing to technical faults at Boeing. So the spotlight is on the Boeing airline, which used to be a monopoly, but no more. And they have dropped the ball in terms of technical development, in terms of safety, etc., etc. So this is also an interesting dimension in the aviation industry, which is very competitive in a post-COVID world. And even the 737 MAX that crashed of Ethiopian Airlines several years ago, and only last year has there been a compensation model. So on a number of levels, it becomes quite interesting. It's interesting for China as well, in a sense that 150 passengers were Chinese. It was a multinational mix of passengers, including Malaysians, some Europeans, etc., etc. And therefore it's an international interest story. Several theories have morphed, and the one being that there was strategic technology on the airplane, and that strategic technology, according to the reports, as it was heading towards Beijing, a Western nation believed that that would not be a good idea for that technology to reach Beijing. And therefore, the plane had to be stopped or diverted by any means necessary. That is one theory explored in a fascinating book by Le Monde French investigative journalist Florence de Chagny. In her book called The Disappearing Act, published in 2021, she has been the journalist that spent the most years on this case, over 7 years, lived in Malaysia for several years, and has interviewed every stakeholder of significance, from Malaysia to Indonesia, China, the US, Maldives, Diego and Mauritius, as well as the South Islands. And her book is by far the most fascinating in terms of coming closest in explaining the phenomena of the disappearance of MH370. So those are some of the theories that the book covers, and it makes for quite fascinating reading.
And I'm sure with incidents of this magnitude, there definitely will be all sorts of theories being spun as people try to find answers and try to make sense of what is going on around them. Ashraf, if I can just ask that you stick with us for a moment. We do need to take an ad break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the discussion.
Okay.
Stereotypes, moving boundaries, joining hands. Salam Media. Humanity sets the agenda.
You know, it's a wonder how kids get anything done these days. With all the distractions, when do they even get time to study? As a mother, all I can really do is make sure they have all they need to perform at their best. That's why I choose to include Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil with every
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Embark on your spiritual journey to Umrah with Mr. Fly Travels. Are you ready to fulfill a lifelong dream and experience the spiritual journey of Umrah? At Mr. Fly Travels, we are dedicated to providing seamless, spiritually enriching trips to the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Let us handle every detail so you can focus on your connection with Allah. Our Umrah packages include visa processing, luxurious accommodation, private transfers, guided ziarah tours, and culinary delights. Take the first step on your journey to spiritual rejuvenation. Reserve your Umrah package today. Limited spots available. Our flexibility with dates to accommodate our clients makes us unique. Call Zuberi on 074 044 4300.
Connect and stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media coming to you live from South Africa.
The Malaysian government has agreed to resume the search for a passenger jet that vanished 10 years ago in one of aviation's greatest mysteries. Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 disappeared in March 2014 on its way to Beijing, China, from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, with 239 people on board. We've obviously heard about the technical aspects, and we've discussed these over numerous occasions in the 10 years that have passed since the disappearance of this flight. But we've been speaking this morning to Ashraf Patel of the Institute of Global Dialogue, just discussing and unpacking some of the political dimensions of this case. Ashraf, before we took an ad break, we spoke about some of the theories, or at least you told us about some of the theories that have been put forward in the years since this mysterious disappearance of this flight. To you, I mean, from your perspective, which of these seems most plausible? I know we can't really speculate about these sorts of things, but when we are looking at the theories that are coming up, which, how do we evaluate them? And, considering the whole context politically, what makes most sense to you?
Look, I mentioned the first theory of potential strategic technology. Some say it was drone technology, and at that time it was still a secretive technology. So that was one theory that is emerging. A second theory is the plane was diverted to the Maldives en route to Kazakhstan, and that they may have been hijacked by someone in the plane. That could be a second theory, that it was hijacked because it sharply turned west en route to Thailand and Vietnam. It then suddenly turned left. So that's another theory. A third theory is the pilot went rogue, and he then took the plane completely south towards the Pacific South Islands. And then the fourth theory is that in that month, the US military was conducting exercises, military exercises, naval exercises in Thailand and Philippines, and it may have been shot accidentally. But none of the theories basically go to the core of the question. Fine, where is the plane? Where is the black box? And a number of information gaps have emerged, of which the book by Florence de Chapny covers quite well, is Boeing and Rolls-Royce, the manufacturers of the engine of the plane, and the plane manufacturer Boeing, have been very, very cagey and disingenuous throughout this incident over several years. They've never cooperated fully with authorities or with the investigation. So that speaks to a broader issue with the military industrial complex in the US. And so that has sparked a new tensions between the ASEAN nations and China vis-a-vis the US. We're not sure. It's one of those fascinating stories, and listeners would have to read the book called The Disappearing Act to really go through all the chapters and then make for a kind of conclusion in their own minds. It is a fascinating publication and what is called a gold standard in investigative journalism, and quite inspirational for journalists and readers across the world. So that is the kind of theories that have emerged so far.
And just quickly before we wrap up, how do you see this playing out in the coming months, especially now that the investigation has there's signs that it might actually be reopened?
Well, it's interesting. One is not sure what informed the decision of the Malaysian government. At the time, President Mahathir Mohamad was quite vocal, and he suggested an independent inquiry, a multinational inquiry, but that did not take place at the time. This time round, we're not sure what's driving it. It does seem to be pressure from the families, the victims, who simply want the truth, so they could get closure. I think that is the big driver at this point in time, as well as reforms that are needed in global aviation safety. That's another big driver. We've seen several planes in the last few months crash. Just last week was the South Korean Airlines. And there hasn't been much transparency from Boeing. Incidentally, China has been quite strategic. Since then, the Chinese Aerospace Corporation, CAC, has developed its own version that competes directly with Boeing these days. And they are really quite successful. They've just launched 2 years ago, and their version of the 737 is just as good as a Boeing or Airbus. And it again shows the rise of China at an economic and technological level, where they're matching the US and Europe at every level, be it in 5G, be it in supercomputers, be it in AI, as well as aerospace now. So China is now the superpower, economic and technological superpower. The last decade, it has scaled and scaled in every sector and is the world's leading economy at this point in time through exports and manufacturing. So there is a strategic shift towards the east, towards BRICS nations that are now the powerhouse and the growth engines of the world. And I think that is an interesting dynamic as a backdrop to the story. As the BRICS world moves and gains momentum, we're seeing a move from the US-led unipolar world towards a multipolarity world that's anchored in Asia and the global south. So this is actually the big backdrop to the story. And whatever the outcome of the investigation, I think it's important to get the truth of the airline and why it completely disappeared from the radar. And at this point in time, it has not been found.
I'm in 2025. It is a new year. Lots can happen. Same old stories, but many new twists that we might not actually even be able to see, but can actually play out. But that is unfortunately as much as we've got time for this morning. Shukran so much for your time.
Shukran. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was Ashraf Patel, a researcher at the Institute for Global Dialogue, speaking to us about the latest developments regarding the Malaysian Airlines MH370. Stay with us. We'll continue with the show when we come back.